When the police go fishing, it's important to spot the stupid questions they're trained to ask you and how to deal with the lies they're allowed to tell you. You mean cops are allowed to lie to you legally? Yes, they are. The Supreme Court has ruled that the police are allowed to lie to you about almost anything. I'm going to cover the stupid questions that cops will ask you and why they will ask them to you. But first, let's look at lie number 1. The first lie I've seen cops use is to tell you you're free to go, but you're not free to stay. How is this a lie? This really comes down to what type of property you are on. Are you on private property where the actual owner of the property has told you you must leave? If so, you should depart the property or risk being arrested for criminal trespass. Are you on a public roadway or a public easement? If so, you are free to leave or you're free to stay. Lie number 2. An anonymous call came in saying that you were weaving all over the road. So I'm going to need you to step out of the car and meet me at the back because I want to make sure you're safe to drive tonight. Now you need to recognize this is a common police technique. Officers will demand you to do things that in reality they should be asking you if you're willing to do. First of all, please recognize when he says he wants to make sure you're safe to drive, what he really means is he wants to make sure he can get you out of the car, have you do field sobriety tests so that he can arrest you. Remember, just because a police officer orders you to do something with authority doesn't mean he actually has the legal basis to require you to do it. This is precisely why it is so important to not only know your rights, but to exercise your rights when an officer starts demanding you to do things you are not required to do. When it comes to field sobriety tests, in most states, you are absolutely not required to submit to these tests. He is only commanding you to take these tests because he's trying to make sure he can establish probable cause to legally arrest you. So you can absolutely refuse the tests. Lie number 3. I'm a little confused here. I'm not sure I understand what you're saying. I need you to make sure and talk to me or take these tests so we can clear this whole thing up. If an officer says something like this to you, he is not confused. He knows exactly what he's doing. In fact, this is a common tactic where the police act like they're confused about something and then they try to turn it right back around onto you. Officers do this by claiming if you don't cooperate with him, he's going to be forced to make an arrest decision based on the evidence he supposedly already has. This is a bait and switch technique that never goes well for those who fall for it. I have seen people fall for this over and over again when it comes to police interrogations and DWI traffic stops. Don't fall for it, because remember, police are legally allowed to lie to you and the Supreme Court has said they can keep doing it. Lie number 4, I smell the odor of burnt marijuana. So I'm going to need you to step out of the car while I perform a search. I wish I had a nickel for every police report and video I've seen where a police officer has claimed this only to find out there was no marijuana in the car at all. I see this happen in Texas all the time. Because it's still illegal to possess marijuana in Texas, I see officers use this lie as a pretext to not only search your vehicle, but to invade your privacy. Beware of this lie because in states where marijuana is still illegal, courts have held that the police can use this as a basis for probable cause to get you out of your car and search your vehicle. Lie number 5, if you don't let me search your car, I'm going to hold you until a drug dog arrives. Not true. Police are only allowed to detain you for a reasonable time to complete the traffic stop. So if a cop pulls you over for speeding, he can't just hold you on the side of the road for an hour waiting for the drug dog to show up. How do we know this? The Supreme Court has ruled that would be an unreasonable amount of time to detain you. Remember, you can always refuse consent to a search in this situation, and you can then ask, am I free to leave? Lie number 6, sorry buddy, the drug dog just alerted on your car, so now we have a right to search. Why do I say this is a lie? Because police know that courts have ruled that they can use alerts from drug dogs even if the drug dogs have not been trained on alerting on the substance they end up finding. Also, it is very subjective as to whether or not a drug dog actually alerted on a car. It can be left up to the canine officer to interpret whether or not the dog alerted or not. How do we know the dog didn't alert just to please his master? Watch out for this one. Lie number 7, watch out. If you don't tell me the truth, I'm going to arrest you. Is this legit? Not exactly. There is a crime known as false report to a peace officer that basically says if you provide false information as a witness to a crime or about someone else, and if the government can prove it was a lie beyond a reasonable doubt, then the DA's office could technically charge you with the misdemeanor crime of false report to a peace officer. However, it is not a crime for you to lie about something that the officer is asking about your behavior. For example, what if the police officer pulls you over and walks up to the window, knocks on it and says, "Hey, did you realize you were driving 90 miles an hour in a 70-mile-an-hour zone back there?" And what if your response is, "No, officer, I didn't realize that. I thought I was driving the speed limit." If the officer can pull out his radar and show you that you were going that speed, can he charge you with a crime for lying to him? Absolutely not. Okay, now, what about those stupid questions cops ask that we talked about earlier? Why do cops ask stupid questions, and what are they hoping to gain from it when they ask you? Stupid question number 1. Do you know why I stopped you this evening? Or, hey, how much did you have to drink tonight? Now, I wish I could tell you that I've never seen anybody answer these dumb questions, but I have seen this happen over and over again, where when police officers ask this question, somebody might say, "Yeah, I'm sorry, officer. I was driving 90 miles an hour in that 70-mile-an-hour zone back there. I hope you'll forgive me. I won't ever do it again." Or, "Yes, officer, I just came from a birthday party, but I only had 3 beers." I'm always a fan of being polite with the police, but when it comes to your constitutional rights, you can absolutely remain silent when it comes to these types of questions. Why? Because these are textbook phishing questions that police officers are trained to ask in order to get you to open up and be comfortable so that they can determine if perhaps you have committed a crime. For example, the moment you admit to speeding, you have now given the officer the ability to detain you and continue his investigation further, which could lead the officer to asking you to step out of the car. Also, the moment you admit to drinking, the officer is going to demand you get out of the car, he's going to demand you take field sobriety tests, and whether you take them or not, you can count on the fact you're going to jail. The point, you don't have to answer any of these questions. You can exercise your right to remain silent. The point, you don't have to consent to any of this. So how should we answer this stupid question from the police? Do you know why I pulled you over this evening? No, sir, I don't. How much have you had to drink tonight? Officer, I invoke my right to remain silent. Hey, you don't mind if I search your car, do you? Officer, I refuse consent to search my car. Hey, I want to make sure you're okay to drive. Would you agree to take a field sobriety test for me? Officer, I'm happy to cooperate with any questioning after my lawyer is present. What if the officer cuts you off and tells you you don't have a right to an attorney? That's when you can remind him, "Officer, I invoke my right to speak to an attorney before any questioning." Now, I'm going to stop right here a second and deal with an issue that I see come up all the time on my videos. Sometimes people ask me, is it okay for me to be calm or can I be aggressive? Because I don't really like the way that the police officer is treating me. Let's talk about this example. Let's say the officer walks up to you with an attitude and he starts saying, "Do you know why I pulled you over today?" Maybe you get a little offended by how aggressive the officer is being and you start saying, "Officer, I don't like your tone. I think you have illegally stopped me and I refuse to answer any further questions. By the way, you are being recorded right now, and if you act even one step over the line, I'm going to sue you for violating my rights." What about this example? "How much have you had to drink tonight?" And then let's say you turn around and your response is, "Officer, that's none of your business. I'm demanding you step away from my window right now." You might think I'm exaggerating, but I see this happen all the time on dash cam videos. I see people saying that we can be super aggressive with officers. I just want to be practical here for just a minute. If that's how you respond to an officer, what do you really have to gain? The first thing that's going to happen is the cop's going to get really pissed. In my experience, when the cop gets pissed and they don't like somebody's attitude, they're now going to pull out every trick in the book to get you out of the car, in handcuffs, and on your way to jail. The most impressive clients I've represented are the ones who were as cool as a cucumber, and they made the actual cop look like the aggressive one, and now they left the officer speechless when they exercised their right and they remained calm. In fact, this is especially true when I've taken cases to trial and there's been an aggressive officer who was overstepping his boundaries, and now we have a client who is acting as cool as a cucumber. The jury's looking at it, they're mad at the officer, and they quickly turn around and give a 2-minute not guilty verdict. Stupid question number 2. Where are you headed? Or where are you coming from? Should you make up an answer here? Do they actually expect you to tell them where you're headed or where you're coming from? No. Cops don't actually care about this question, but they do care about you talking. The more that you open your mouth and you engage in this small talk with the police, the more they can size you up on the side of the road. Think about it. If you get to talking here, now the police can start getting closer to you, seeing if they smell an odor of an alcoholic beverage, or maybe they don't like your reaction. Maybe they think you're acting suspicious or nervous. The officers I've seen use this will sometimes then take that nervousness they claim you're acting, or maybe you're moving around or grabbing for something, and now they claim they can get more aggressive with you for officer safety. How do we answer this stupid question? Officer, I exercise my right to remain silent. Stupid question number 3. You have any drugs or guns in this car? You mind if I search your car? First, you have a Fifth Amendment right not to answer these questions, and you should strongly consider exercising that right in this situation. Secondly, you have a Fourth Amendment right to refuse any consent to search and put it back on the officer to develop probable cause. Think about it. Some people say, I don't get it, Jeff. I don't have anything in my car. Why wouldn't I just let the officer search my car? Well, let me ask you this. Have you had anybody else in your car lately? Do you ever take any employees or coworkers or friends or neighbors? What about your kids? Maybe you let your kids ride in the car and maybe some of their buddies you don't know that well. How do you know for sure what is exactly in your car at any given moment? I want to remind you, if you give consent to search your vehicle and a police officer finds anything in your car, especially the stuff you don't know anything about, you're going to find yourself taking a trip down to the police station, and you will now be charged with whatever they find. Oh, and by the way, you're also giving the opportunity for the officer to completely wreck through your car. They could tear out the seats, they could pull anything and everything out, and if they happen to cause any damage while they leave you on the side of the road for over an hour, you're not going to get anybody to pay for it. So how should you answer this stupid question? You got any drugs or guns in this car? Officer, I exercise my right to remain silent. Do you mind if I search your car for a minute? Officer, I refuse consent to search my car. And oh, officer, am I free to leave? By responding this way, you are forcing this officer to establish probable cause, and you are ensuring that he is not going to be able to take any of your statements or any type of search and use it against you. What if the cop still searches illegally? Well, now you have refused consent to search, you've remained silent, and he has no probable cause. So if you end up in court, your criminal defense attorney can file a motion to suppress, and the entire thing can be thrown out in court. Stupid question number 3. I smell marijuana coming from your car. It's going to be a lot better for you if you'll just be honest with me up front. I have actually seen some people on dash cams and clients that have turned around and responded to the officer when they ask this question, and they say, okay, officer, I'm sorry. I do have marijuana in the car. Can you just cut me a break? This response almost never works because the moment you admit to possessing something illegal, now you're giving the officer probable cause to completely search everything in your vehicle and get you out of the car. If you exercise your right to remain silent, he has to have his own independent probable cause in order to be able to legally search you or your vehicle. So how do we respond to this stupid question? Officer, I exercise my right to remain silent. If you remain silent, you're now putting the burden back on the officer to establish probable cause that a crime has taken place. And even if he gets you out of the car, he'll still separately, if he finds any drugs, he'll have to prove that you intentionally or knowingly exercised care, custody, or control over the illegal item in order to convict you. What if the officer pulls you aside and says, hey man, off the record, I have just a few questions for you. Check out this next video where I go over 12 more police lies that they will use against you that could land you in jail. See you over there.